This is over solving with me. Now we've done a little bit of this stuff is a little bit of review, but there is a lot more. This is I thought about trying to take problems off because it seems like I don't know if it's. I thought about taking some of them off to make it a little bit shorter, but honestly, a lot of these I want you to see some of these different variations. Maybe I'll change my mind as we go for later. So, about these steps, really there's only 3 steps, but a couple half steps just to make some reminders. A little bit more detail. But first off, the first thing I would check, or the first thing it's not a bad idea to look for, if there's an exponent, double check. If it's even, you either get 2 answers or no solutions, or 0 answers. If it's an odd, you end up getting 1 solution. If you look at these first couple ones that I have right here, number 1, 2, and 3, none of those have exponents. They all have radicals. Some of them have index numbers. I mean, technically, they all have index numbers. Just the first one is a 2. Step 0.5. That's one that a lot of people forget. A lot of people don't realize when they're supposed to get 2 answers or no solutions or something like that. So I think it helps right away to address that. Step 1 is getting the radical by itself. Step 2 is canceling the radical and or the exponent. So that's, again, kind of the same thing. So I put it in 1 step. And again, I'm trying to remind you of step 2.5. If you canceled an even exponent, that's when you need the plus or minus. So again, if you think back when we did that with quadratics, we needed that plus or minus anytime we canceled out a squared. Well, now it's not just squared, it's even exponents. Again, we'll go over some of that in a second. I try to ease you into it a little bit. So these first 3. Remember, adding is the opposite of subtraction. That's not subtraction. You're not subtracting 8 from anything. That's a negative 8. Now we cancel out that radical. Again, normal 2-step. Now, I will say I put a lot in that question, mainly because we've done questions like that before. So, again, if you don't before, it should seem familiar. But different. Cancel the square. Squaring both sides. That's because having to raise something to the 5th power. And this one, we're going to have to raise it to the 4th power, and so on and so forth. That's the from what we've done in the past. So, again, you need to raise it to the 5th. Equal to either use a calculator. Your exponent sheet has this on there. And again, you will get a brand new exponent sheet for the test. That gives you 32. Now, I'm hoping this goes without saying at this point. But remember, when you're solving questions, you can always check by plugging your answer back in. So if you plugged in 32, the 5th root of 32 is 2. 2 minus 7 is -5. Now, again, as a realist, I know a lot of you guys aren't going to do that, but if you're somebody that you failed that first test and you really need to get your grade up, if you're one of the 5 or 6 people that have asked me if I offer extra credit or what you can do to get your grade up, that's the stuff you can do. Double checking your work. If you double check your work and catch 2 mistakes on a test, that's worth more than any extra credit I could ever give you. And same thing with this last one. I 8 divided by -2 is +4. Both of them to the 4th power, since that index. So that's x minus 3 is equal to 256. And last but not least, 3 to both sides. 56 plus 3 is 259. Any questions on those before we move on? I'm not going to say it's going to get a lot harder by any means. I think the math, honestly, that's probably as difficult as it's going to be as far as the math goes. But there are going to be more steps. There's going to be different things to cancel. We're going to have exponents that we're also going to have to cancel. So I need to make sure we're on board before we move on. Okay. Now, this next section is all problems, which is good news because that means we only get one answer. I wanted to start you out with these, you get one answer to get you guys comfortable with that, and then throw in the ones where you get 2 answers, which isn't much different. Just remembering that part. It's almost the same steps we did before on those first 3. The only difference is instead of a radical, it's an exponent. B, get the exponent by itself with the parentheses. The third root of 27 is 3. Then the last step, solve that equation. Four for that one. And same that last one, again, get the exponent by itself, divide both sides by 2. I get x to the third is equal to -125. Now I put this one in here on purpose, and I have made some of these. But to cancel out the third root, I need the third power, I take the third root. The third root of -125, since it's an odd number, do the third root of -125, it's just -5. If it was an even number, that's when you'd end up getting those solutions. But again, if you have an odd exponent, you're always, if you have a negative, you can get a negative answer. That's fine. So really, again, in my opinion, that's as difficult as it's going to be. I'll be busier than that because now we're going to do both of those things we just did in one problem. But again, it's just a couple extra steps. So the first thing, like I told you, that step 0.5, they're all odd, so you're always going to get one answer for all these. You're never going to have no solution. Certainly not confident. Make sure you check. No. Take both sides squared and then take the third root, or take the third root first and square it. You get the same answer. Don't worry about it. Just do it the way I'm showing you. Again, you're going to deal with bigger numbers sometimes, but you guys have calculators. It's just a matter of writing more digits or typing more. Now, again, I'm not for today. Now, again, that's confusing. I get that's not easy, but we're doing that over and over and over again today. We're going to add a little bit of extra next couple, next section. One, get the radical. Logically, it's easier smaller numbers, but like this one, 8 to the fourth is 4,090. Yeah, that's a big number, but it's you're using a computer, especially for numbers. Now, again, before we do anything else, we can't. 409. Again, you can very much check your work by plugging the answer for some of you. And the last one, number 6. Again, in my opinion, it's much more difficult than all the other problems. There's more going on. Radical by itself, I need to first I need to cancel out this 7. 2, 4th root of x plus 3 equal to 47 plus 7 is 54. Then of x plus 3 to the third equal to 54 divided by 2. I'm going to say is 27. Always good to double check that. And now we have the radical all by itself. So now we can raise both sides to the 4th power. Again, this is going to be a pretty big number. 27 times 27 times 27 times 27. It's going to be pretty beefy. That's okay. You end up with x plus 3 to the third is equal to 531, 441. Again, if you don't like a big number like that, you can cancel out the exponent of 3 first. Every year I teach this, I always go back and forth on which way I want to do it. And again, I think visually it makes a little bit more sense to do this way, but some of you guys are good enough at math, you can go to high school. Cancel out the exponent with the third root. That's x plus 3 is equal to, third root of that number is 81. And last but not least, now I can subtract 3. X is equal to 81 minus 3 is 78. So again, you'll not ever hear me say that this is an easy problem. Go ahead and I'm only going to have you guys do one of these. Doesn't make more. I will say, you look at all these examples, they all have an exponent of 3. These are just odd exponents. So they could have an exponent of 5 or an exponent of 7. The problem is with 5 and 7, they get even bigger, even quicker. So that's why it ends up 3 is usually about the top I can go. Sometimes I can throw in a 5. But yeah, this works for any odd exponent, not just 3. Okay, I'm going to have you guys do number 7. Number 7 and 8 are really pretty similar. Just one of them you add first and one of them you divide first. So go. And then we'll move on to the next ones. Sorry about that. Yes. I thought you guys could verbally hear me say, pick up. My apologies. Again, if you put that in your equation to get your square root of 729 is what could be doing. It makes sense, but this one doesn't. Okay, so again, that's literally all we're doing today. That's it. The only difference is in the next one that we're doing, there's an even exponent in there. And again, I want to make sure it has nothing to do with answers or no solution. Those are the only options. So again, honestly, if I were on Friday, I would go through all the questions that have an equal sign with them, all the solving questions. I would look to see the exponents, and before I solve anything, I would just say, okay, even exponent, and I'd put down even exponent, or 2 or 0 answers. Every time that there's an odd exponent, I would put down 1 answer, something like that before I do anything else, just because for me, that's what I would predict. If we're solving, you could plug in a positive 3 or you could plug in a negative 3 because when you square those, they both get you positive 9. But we talked about this back when we did the quadratics. If you ever cancel out an exponent of 2, you need 2 answers. Well, now we're expanding it into any even exponent. technically, and I'm not going to make you guys do this, technically the solution would be plus or minus 5i, because we talked about doing the square roots of negative. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole in this chapter, because that is correct with a exponent of 2. But if there's an exponent of 4, it's no solution, but it's not imaginary, and that gets super confusing. So if you want to go ahead and go the extra mile and put 5i, I'm not going to count you off by any means, but I'm not going to recommend doing that, because again, that's if it's a squared. But if it's a fourth root, if you're doing the fourth root, or if it's an exponent of 4, for lack of a better word. -5 would give you that. Number. Now, to be honest with ourselves, if you forget that and you solve this like normal and get like what the fourth root of 81 is 3 maybe or something like that, if you solved it normally, I'd still give you most of your points. But it saves you a lot of time. Now, there are problems. If you're super stressed remembering the plus or minus or not, is again, before you do any problems on the test, go through, find the solving part, and write them down before we even start. Because you can tell. Because if you solve it the exact right way and you only get one answer, you'll still get most of your credit, which I know is not necessarily things, but it's not like you get a 50%. But again, I just strongly recommend before we even start, I'm going to use these even exponent, even exponent, all those you can tell you're going to get a plus or minus somewhere or no solution. Two, probably 2 answers. So we do this the exact same way what we've done before. Genuinely don't know what. Now, this is again what we've done in the past, where really this is giving you two. And again, if you look back at our steps, not to rewind all the way back here, so if you follow these steps, and I'm not going to give these to you on a test, but if you need to memorize something, if you memorize those, make sure you include that in there because I think that's very helpful. Hopefully, you do enough of these you don't have to memorize. They didn't put positive 25 and negative 25 because that's kind of a mistake. That was totally above that. I believe 4. Not fall into the trap. A lot of people put plus or minus times people do by accident. So that's just, I want to point out a common mistake. We have positive 8s, negative 8s. One of them is positive 7. That's one answer. One of them is negative 9. Again, if you plug either of those, so I'm going to go. If usually you do problems at the end, I probably should have you do them, but if you'd rather start your worksheet, I get it. But before we go on, I do want to point this out and try to figure out the best way to tell you. Now, I'm not going to give you, I probably won't give you any of those, but I thought it deserved mention. Now, I honestly, the main reason I'm not recommending get to pre-calculus. So about 10 minutes left. If you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, work on your worksheet, work on your exit ticket. The exit ticket should be corrected by now. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to ask.